Hey, secret friends, welcome back to the Spotlight. This is, of course, our show where we talk to the people in pop culture that make the stuff we love. And we have a returning interviewee who has previously been a guest host. So this is kind of a first. But I've got a friend of the show and lover of Peacemaker, which she and I talked about last year, Stephanie Czajkowski. How are you this evening?
I am pretty good. I just, I have a callback for something, which I'm super excited about.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
yes.
just,
I remember. Yeah.
it's been a weird industry. And so like getting auditions is great. Getting a callback, even if you don't get the job, is great. So literally before I jumped on with you, I have a callback for a movie in Winnipeg, which I'm kind of excited about. So
Ah, oh my
yeah.
God. I'm
Ooh.
psyched. Of course, no jinxing, so don't tell us more.
I know. I'm
But
just like, oh, I probably
we will
told you too much.
absolutely go see it if it's something that comes to place. But it's been awesome to have you on. And again, we barely knew each other, but it was one of those social media things. And I'm just like, hey, would you like to come on and talk about a show? And you're like, I love watching Peacemaker. And I'm like, I loved watching Peacemaker. So you and I did that last fall. We did that, and that was totally awesome. So that's how we met. And then I reached back out to you and I said, well, I want to get the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And here you are. So let's do that. Tell me
So
about
much
how you.
story to be had.
Yes. Why don't you start at the start? Tell me how you got started.
Oh my goodness. I got started allegedly in acting. I always wanted to be an actor. Like I would get up and like perform at kids' birthday parties, namely my youngest memory is getting up and singing in front of my cousin's birthday party in Chicago, A Boy and a Girl in a Little Canoe, which was a camp song. Um,
Nice.
That's awesome.
I know. In front of my cousin, who I still think doesn't really like me that much, in the John Hancock building. But then, like the thing that is sticks out most in my mind, and I remember specifically, is when I was in kindergarten. They used to have when I would come home from school because it was a half day in Wisconsin. On they would have in syndication the Brady Bunch and something else. I can't remember. The Courtship of Eddie's Father, I think. I'm
Oh,
aging myself.
oh
Um,
my gosh.
and I loved Brady Bunch. And when cousin Oliver came on, I suddenly was like, wait a minute, another kid can be on this who's not part of the family. And I made my mom write a letter to the local ABC affiliate to ask how I could be on the show. And they, to their credit, wrote back. There's a letter somewhere. I'm not sure if I have it. They wrote back and said, well, it hasn't been in production for over a decade. So if you want to get into acting, you should start, getting like going on model, find an agent and do modeling and suggested a bunch of things. My parents are not in the industry by any stretch of the imagination. May they rest in peace because they're both passed since in the last decade. My dad in 2017, but basically, I was going to a Catholic school and I was always singing in the talent shows. I started writing plays in sixth grade so that we could perform them, and they actually let me do it. And then we moved to a suburb of Chicago that had a summer theater that they would do, and I auditioned and I got in, and then I ended up in my high school had a really robust theater program, so it was very much like theater, and didn't know how to do it. So I went to college. I went to NYU. I auditioned. I
Wow.
got in. I went to Tisch. I thought that was where you went. My aunt, aforementioned aunt of this cousin whose birthday I sang at, she, her daughter went to a really, really expensive private school called Francis Parker in Chicago, where Daryl Hannah's sister went. Daryl Hannah's sister, her stepsister went. And so my aunt became friends with Daryl Hannah's mom at a point for a long
Oh
point of
my
time.
gosh. Weird.
And Sue Wexler, a woman named Sue Wexler, was the woman who was like, oh, if you're going to school, you should go to one of these three schools. So I applied for Yale, Northwestern, and NYU. And when I auditioned for NYU, it was Valentine's Day. It was snowing. And they do these big auditions for all of these schools, and it was the one I was going to. And the gentleman who auditioned me in the room was like, I did my monologue or whatever, and he was like, all right, well, we'll see you in the fall. And so he ruined it for me because my parents were still together. They got divorced like a year later. My senior year, it was my junior, I think it was my junior year. And no, it was my senior year. So they were already divorced. But my dad's like, you need to go to we can't afford NYU. Like, they're like, you can't afford it. But I was like, nope, this is where I want to go. And so that's what happened. I went to NYU undergrad and then basically, graduated and tried to figure it out. Because what I also realized later is that the undergrad program, unlike the ones that they had ranked, were not the undergrad programs. They had ranked the grad programs. So but that was it. Like, I was like, I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how. So I figured I would go to school and school would teach me. And school taught me some stuff, but it was a lot of just sticking with it for the most part. And, doing off Broadway theater. And I did some semi-regional theater, dinner theater, and then finally moved to LA because originally I wanted to be, and I still have like little inklings toward it as I get older and my voice is different now, but I wanted to do musical theater, but I was 5'10" and I wasn't a dancer. And as my voice matured, I had this kind of lower contra alto, like I was a mezzo, but I had a contra alto voice that like the lower register kicked in when I was like 17, 18. Man. So I had been like a soprano in choir or whatever. And so now I had a totally different voice. And I remember one of my teachers being like, you have a woman's voice in a girl's body. You will work when you're like 40. I was like,
well, how inspirational.
Well, in musical theater, right? Because I wasn't an ingenue and I didn't like, and in musical theater, in most things, like in a lot of things, like I have friends that I've made or people I know who, they like straight out of school, not even out of school, are just, you're that type. And mine has been, I'm a character actor. It's been a journey to figure out where I fit in, and which is a very good segue because where I fit in really well is in genre and where I fit in really well is in sci-fi.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
So that's kind of the trajectory. And it was just move to LA, audition for things, it was, it's the Nathan, it's almost 20 years of just, you keep showing up and trying to figure it out. And I think I could have probably figured it out faster if I've been not smarter, but maybe smarter. I don't know,
Life's a journey. It's you're on the road of it. Awesome. All right, Peter.
All right. So obviously we are major Star Trek fans. So before you, I know. So before you joined the Star Trek Picard cast, how long had you been a Star Trek fan? And if you had, did you have a favorite character and or series?
I did not necessarily have a favorite character, although I did like McCoy. My father was a huge Star Trek fan. And he was a guy who did not go to college. He went to night school. And when I was 5, like when I was a little kid, part of my recollection of growing up is him doing his homework on the weekends and us in the same way I, after school, would watch, Brady Bunch and Courtship of Betty's Father or whatever it was. My father on weekends would consistently watch Star Trek and Hogan's Heroes. And so the first movie I remember going to was Star Trek the Motion Picture. Later in my life, my mom was a seamstress who could make costumes and was working for a costume shop, working and making those outfits from the voyage home for cosplayers, for Star Trek cosplayers, when cosplaying was not nearly as accepted.
I've owned a couple of those. Those are very interesting outfits. I don't own one currently. I sold my last one to Peter.
Yeah, but
interesting outfits.
They're very difficult to make. So Star Trek has been threaded throughout my life, and I watched TNG, but it wasn't a case where I was like a diehard Star Trek fan. Like, it was there, and I watched it, and I saw all the movies, because it was so ingrained in my DNA a little bit, right?
Yep.
Um, and the level of how infused my soul or my DNA was palpable the first day I walked onto that set and sat on the bridge and was like, holy shit. But yeah, like
Yeah.
up until that, like I tell a story about how my father loved Worf, like, and I had friends. So I and all of my ex-boyfriends loved Star Trek. So I was always in and around it, but it was I loved Patrick Stewart. I loved Patrick Stewart in The Next Generation, but I've also never been someone who's like I love people who love things, but I've
Hmm.
never been one of those people who's like just super into something. It's part of the reason I love what I do, because when I do something is when I become super into something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So, I actually going on the plane to the Star Trek cruise and back.
Yeah.
On my tablet, I downloaded all the episodes of season 3 of Picard. I hadn't really watched it since Peter and I. We on our Star Trek show we do breakdowns of live stuff.
Mhm.
So, but it had been 3 years since
Yeah.
I had really drilled down and watched all of it, and I was shocked how much of that show you were in. I knew that ultimately what your fate was, but I knew that was in episode 7 or 8, I think, but you
Right.
were in the rest of it.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm digging around on Memory Alpha, which is the big online wiki of Star Trek, and I didn't
I'm
even
very
really
familiar
realize.
with it.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, I didn't even really realize. Obviously, your character was bald, and I know that that there's some background to that, but I didn't realize that the character was Vulcan Deltan, and I was like, that's a very interesting two races to kind of squish together. You mentioned Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is over my shoulder here. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of that movie. I think it's really misunderstood, but that gave us our main Deltan character and the character of
Yeah.
Lieutenant Ilea. So, and it's funny, this question and the next question Peter has as well are a little bit about headcanon, because I've always understood, as you know, as an actor, you kind of construct a little bit of character background in your own head as you're portraying a character. What tell me a little bit about what you felt like about Lieutenant Tavine, and if she would have lived, what role do you think she might have played if things had moved forward into the legacy that we all want to see
Right.
that we may never see?
Well, it was interesting because when I was cast, it wasn't necessarily going to be a Vulcan. It was literally just science officer, here's some lines, do the lines. And it was kind of decided after, based on, I think, your portrayal of what it was, because it's all top secret and whatever. So
Hmm.
when I auditioned, I just come back from working on MacGruber. I was in MacGruber, and my hair was a little bit longer, and they'd submitted these bald headshots. So I shaved my head for the audition. I reshaved it. And when I read it, I was like, I'm like, science officer. I think I know what this is. This feels very Spocky to me. So I
Yeah,
just went
yeah.
with it. Like, I was like, all right, let's just go with it. And then when I got to, when they cast me, and it was a very fast turnaround, I sent a tape. I got an audition on a Wednesday. I sent the tape in by Friday, and by Friday night, I basically have been cast. Like,
So that's
it was
awesome.
that
Wow,
fast.
that's quick.
And I seem to do really well in those situations. And also, I think sometimes they're looking, when I was talking about like fitting into things, sometimes they're looking for me and they don't know, and then they find me, and it's like, and it's always like, and in 3 days I'm somewhere else. But so I went deep in. So once we decided that, I knew of Spock, but I also knew he was half human, half Vulcan. And so I dug so deep into the mythology of volcanism. And also, Terry was very kind to, the production secretary sent me a list of Vulcan episodes from all the series to look at. And
Nice.
I and then also we had the conversation, does she have a bald head or not? Like, is it like, can we do that? And Terry's like, I'm cool with, like, what do you think? And I was like, well, let me double check, because I don't want to make anybody mad. Like, if we're gonna do
Right.
this, we got to make sure that it actually exists somewhere or can exist. And so the decision was, after I kind of looked, and there were bald Vulcans, they were mostly priests are priests and older,
Right.
weren't necessarily women. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's do it. They do exist. We've seen them. And I was like, and what happens if she's like a little Deltan too? And he's like, all right, but she can only be a quarter Deltan.
Oh,
Grandmother,
okay.
it's 3/4, whatever. He's like, get prepared to answer shit about get it prepared to answer shit about your, you know, your about your sex life.
Yep.
Because that's where he gets
Right.
But for me, like the ownership and the flexibility for me to be that creative, for allowing me to take those reins and do that, gave me, because I am in it a lot, but a lot of what I say is a lot of, you know, techno babble. So it,
Right.
you know, it's a lot of reactions, it's a lot of techno babble. And so it just also gave me more internally to play with as someone who's dealing with the duality, not unlike Spock, because Deltans are so just physical and emotional, and Vulcans used to be very emotional and now have like put a stop on it, right? For if you look at history. And so it internally just gave me things to play when reacting to stuff of, how do I feel about these? Well, you know, how does that manifest, and how much of that is emotional issue, more emotional? Because also what ends up happening often when people play Vulcans is they play them as unemotional, and that's so untrue.
Right.
Yep.
Agreed.
They're like, you know, fascinating and curious literally are the keywords, because they've learned to step back and look at things, but it doesn't mean they don't feel anything, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
and in that that's where it all kind of manifested. And I don't know, if I kept going, like I always had a mini dream that like I don't know if Ed would say this, but I got along really well with Ed on set, Ed Spielers at
Mhm.
Jack. And I always was like, it would be so much fun to just like have like a Spock, like a reinvention of the Spock Kirk relationship
Totally.
to Van to
Yeah.
Van. So that was like my mini dream, but
That could
Yeah.
happen,
you
yeah.
know,
The headcanon. I love it.
bad
That's
canon.
totally
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Cool. Cool.
I
All right, Peter.
totally get what you're saying about Vulcans. I've role played them a couple times, and that's something that you have to do. Which,
Yeah.
granted, nowhere near as good, but
Get you in the headspace though.
yeah.
A lot of I
Um,
did a lot of meditating. There was a lot of meditating, like in order to like
Right.
find that shit.
Yep.
Anyway,
Right. The little Vulcan candle like Tuvok always had,
Yes.
burning in the window.
exactly.
Yeah. So, speaking of headcanon, but a little different tack. So, when it comes to getting into the head of any character, so not just Tavine, but like any character, because you mentioned that you do a bit of kind of character acting put into those spots. What's your process of like getting into that headspace? How do you bring those characters to life? Like, do you have a specific way of doing it, or is it different each time?
It's different. It's often different each time. Like it really depends on who the character is and what my hook is. I mean, inevitably in film and television, they're always kind of casting for this visage, like what I look like. Like that does a lot of the storytelling. And so because of that, there's a lot of those things that kind of thread over. And so often I look for the thing that I can connect to in my humanity, and that's kind of the thing that helps pull them into me a little bit. I would say that I would definitely say that is how I go about it. And then from there I go, you know, I will go with like Tavine in particular. I did some coaching with an acting coach just because I'm like, it's Star Trek, don't fuck it up. And so
Fair.
it was yes, headspace, but also how you embody the world. I'm a fitness instructor, and I embody the world in a very physical way, generally speaking. I can get super heady too, but where I feel my most grounded and where I do my best work is where I'm fully embodied in my body, because it changes how I move, and then that lends itself to finding stuff. And then from those clues, I go with wardrobe, and I go like I look for like ears, all of those things. It's all of those things. Um, but it depends. Like it always starts with, it always starts with what is their purpose in this show. Like look at where I always look
Mhm.
at where I am in the larger scope of the story we're trying to tell, what my place is in that, and then how I fill it. So I like to kind of create the boxes in which to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes
Awesome.
how
Yeah.
those and sometimes how those come about are very different.
Right.
You know,
Cool. Good
'cause
deal.
yeah.
All right. So you and I were talking about, we were bonding over Peacemaker because we love that show. And as I mentioned previously, and then as we were talking a little bit, you had mentioned that you had, some affinity for DC Comics. You were in the Doom Patrol show, which
Yeah.
I promised you I was going to watch. We started, and then my ADD led me somewhere else. So I'll get back to it because I
It's
didn't get to the part
insane, yeah.
that you were on, and I still wanted to see that you and McGruber as well. So I'm gonna go check out your stuff. But I'm a big Marvel nutcase. As a matter of fact, Daredevil comes on tonight in about 40 minutes, so I'm super psyched about that. But if you flipped over from DC to Marvel, if something led you back in Marvel Studios direction, based on the public kind of consciousness, familiarity with characters or whatever it is, what kind of Marvel character would you be like? That would be my dream, to play a character like that.
Yeah. Um, I would. There is a Marvel character. There's a sister of, um, she's a big like she has a big sword. God, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like I would love to be any of the X-Men, or I'm kind
Yeah.
of I'm there's a deep part of me, like Jessica Jones is so amazing.
I know the character you're thinking of. You're thinking of Magic, who is
Maybe
the sister of Colossus, the X-Men.
yeah, it could be
New
yeah,
Mutants.
yeah, New Mutant.
Anya Taylor-Joy played her in the New Mutants movie that came out 5 or
Yeah,
6 years ago.
yeah. So I'm just kind of like I enjoy, because I've been the thing that I enjoy in watching Marvel shows is how there are characters that I'm like, I didn't know about that character, what? But honestly, I'm just like, put me in coach, whatever. Put me in
Yeah.
who is it? Something the Hunter, Aaron. What was that? That was he had his sister.
Oh, Kraven the Hunter,
Raven's
which
Craven
is
the
a
Hunter has
Spider-Man
a
villain.
sister. He has a sister
I don't remember her
named
name
like
though.
Anastasia or something. And literally I was
Right.
like, and someone's like,
Yeah.
you look like, and I was like, great, can I play that? Honestly, I would play anybody. I
hear you.
would play anybody. Because I think it would be
Yeah.
so much fun. Like I watched, Terry and Todd go work on Vision, and I was like, I want to go play. Like, and it must have
I
been
was
so
in
much
I was in an elevator with Todd on the cruise, and I
fun.
was just chit chatting. We were talking about improv because he had done this amazing. They did the time warp. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
you've seen the videos going around, but I was chit chatting with him about that and about improv. We have an improv here in Grand Rapids. I'm thinking about taking some classes, and I said, "Well, let me ask you a question you can't answer." He says, "Vision Quest. When are we going to see it?" "Oh no, that's fine. 2026." I'm like, "Damn it!"
Yeah.
It just because we want to talk about it on the show, but I just want to know. Being such a big Marvel fan, I want to know to plan for it. But I'm sure one Monday will come along and they'll say it's going to be on in 2 weeks or something like
Oh
that. So
no,
I don't care.
they'll make big announcements about it. They will make big
Oh my
announcements. I
gosh.
It
imagine
won't
if
be a
it's
surprise tomorrow.
no,
Yeah.
I imagine they'll do first looks at Comic-Con, right? San Diego.
Yeah,
Like
July, and we're
July
only a
would make sense.
few
Like
months.
when did they were shooting all last year, because it usually takes with all the because there's so many effects and
Yeah.
stuff. So you need
12 months, you'd
a
think.
good
Yeah.
12
So
months. Yeah.
yeah, because
But
he was in London, because I follow him on socials, and he was in
yeah,
London posting everything, and that was 6 months ago. You're right. So
so
we could be 6
soon,
months out. So
probably coming into the fall, maybe, or maybe you'll get it earlier. I don't know.
I'm
I don't know.
keeping my
I'm not in
yeah.
the know. I'm not
You're
in
not
the know.
plugged
I'm not
in.
in the
You're as
know.
plugged in as I am.
Yeah, not in the no. Every
Cool.
so often I'll like send up a flirt to Terry and be like, "Thank you so much."
Oh my
I
gosh,
hope
boy,
it's
he's somebody.
I
I
hope
met him very briefly at Star Trek Las Vegas back in 2023. Very nice guy, very unassuming. I didn't know if he'd ever been to anything Star Trek, but I've noticed he looked comfortable. But I've noticed every time I've met Anson Mount at any show, which has been a couple times, he always looks terrified.
yeah.
So that just always kind of blows my mind about, yeah, you can't tell. I'm sure it's very daunting to go to shows. You and I will actually be together at Star Trek Long Island. My wife and I are going to be there
Oh,
representing our
nice.
show
That's awesome.
as podcast guests. So I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
That's
So anyway,
awesome. I was in
yes,
Star
indeed.
Trek. I was in 24, wasn't I? I tried to go to Las Vegas in 23 and I couldn't get in. Couldn't get in.
Can't get in.
So
We haven't been back. It's such a big undertaking. I have a recurring work conflict that keeps me from going, which is a bummer.
yeah.
So
Well, but you've been on the
anyway, but
cruise too, so there's many.
oh yeah,
Like there's
the
always
cruise.
things
Yeah.
that, like, is it bigger? What is better, bigger, smaller?
The cruise, again, I could ramble about the cruise, but I'm a proponent of the cruise over anything. It's such a great experience.
Yeah.
I
But
just wave either way.
I know I'm trying to get Peter's on the wait list. Peter and his brother are on a
Yeah.
wait list for a cabin, so fingers crossed for him. Anyway, Peter, last question is yours.
All right. So I was reading in your bio that you have survived not one, but 3 different kinds of cancers, which is awesome. Not that you had it,
Superstar.
but that you survived.
Yeah.
So in the midst of that, you also chronicled and blogged through the whole experience. So would you be willing to tell us a little about that and what inspired you to start posting about it?
I have no problem whatsoever talking about
I
it.
figured
talk
you
about it all
wouldn't.
the time. Yeah. No. So I was diagnosed with my first cancer. It was all within a 16-month. It was 2018 into
God.
2019. I was
Oof.
diagnosed in March of 2018 with thyroid cancer, and then June of 2018 with breast cancer.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then because they were like, it's weird that you have 2 cancers. We should just make sure you're not a tumor farm. And surprise,
Oh no.
then they did a
Oh
PET
my
scan
God.
and found the beginning of kidney cancer in
Oh
December of
Jesus.
2018.
Oof.
So when these all came about, like, the thyroid cancer was not that it wasn't a big deal. They're like, look, we're just going to cut your thyroid out. It happens to everybody. It's a baby cancer, blah, blah, blah. I happened to find the lump in my breast the Saturday before the Thursday I was supposed to go in for my thyroid surgery. It was like
Oh my
really right on top
goodness.
of each other.
Whoa.
And when that came back positive, and I was given a date for my double mastectomy, I was kind of like, oh shit. Because I have a lot of friends and I have work people, and so I have to, and I told people that I had thyroid cancer. But what I realized is there's going to be a lot of people who wanted to know a lot of information. And I had a good friend at my workplace who was dealing with stage 4 metastatic melanoma. And what she did is she started a Facebook page, basically. That was the place that she could just go and be like, if you give a shit, here's all the information, so that I don't have to keep talking about it, or I don't have to keep telling the
Right.
same story all over and over again. And part of it was the year before my father had died, my uncle had died, and one of my it was a hell of a couple years. My father died, my uncle died, and then one of my roommates from college, who was a good friend, died within about 6 months of each other.
Oh
It was
my
just
gosh.
one after the other. And so I was kind of in this weird place that when the cancer diagnoses started, that I just didn't have the bandwidth or the energy to lie about it, I guess. Because my whole world had been turned on such an axis that I wasn't sure, especially once I started the breast cancer treatment, the surgery, and then found out was going to do chemo and everything. I didn't know if I would be able to act again. I didn't know if my career was over. I so didn't know what was going to happen. But the one thing I knew is that I was going to write it down. And I thought about writing it down partially to do exactly that, to just start a website and so people could go and see it. And I'd post it on Facebook or whatever, so that people knew who wanted to know, but also I didn't have to keep telling the story. But also it was a semi creative outlet of sorts, because I didn't know if I would have one of those. And so that's kind of why. But also when we started, I also made my husband do it in conjunction. So, like, there's blog posts there's more from me than there is from him. But I also thought it might be, we're in the industry. And so you're like, how do you make anything you're doing a show or whatever? But I mean, you do, like, you're like, how do I,
Right.
I found out I had cancer. And the first thing I did was call my commercial agents and be like, hey, so I now am, because I always ask for real cancer patients. And I'm like, boom, No, because it's very dark humor wise, but it was also
Mhm.
the place I was in. Like I was like, I don't fucking know
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. So
Yeah.
so I wrote it down, but I also partially wrote it down. I think a little for me, but at the time I was like, I'm gonna do this so people know, but also because I feel like all of the things I've looked for or looked to for advice, etc., are always so just well, they're always so about death and not
Yeah.
about like when and I see that too when like they talk about someone else has died of cancer. My question is always like or breast cancer. I'm like, what kind? Like what kind because treatment has come so far that like I technically am living because I had a recurrence in 2022. I'm living with stage well, it's a weird thing. I can't say that I have stage 4 cancer, but I'm not and I'm cancer free technically, but I basically have been deemed by my doctors as having chronic cancer. So I
Oh
will take
gosh.
pills for cancer for the rest of my life. And if they stop working because the cancer comes back, I'll be on something else. But it's so dependent on whether it's only viewed as a death sentence because that's the world we live in. That I also
Mhm.
wanted to bring some sort of not levity. I mean, a little bit of levity because that is just kind of the way I and my husband deal with things, but also some realism so that people understand to a degree what the actual experience is like. So it's a little less scary.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, and hopefully you'll never. Hopefully you stay just as you are, cancer free, technically.
Yeah.
As you,
Yeah. I
as you
mean,
said, air
it's
quotes.
so
Oh my
it's,
gosh.
and it's, I mean, and it's also any sort of cancer diagnosis where you're going through it. A friend of mine was like, you should do a podcast. And I was like, fuck no. Because I didn't, because I didn't, I mean, maybe like I didn't want to have to talk about it. Like the nice thing about writing
Right.
is you can really
Yeah.
think about it and you can edit
Right.
it. You can, as opposed to, and we actually did a podcast like a year later because it was COVID and everybody did a podcast, right? And then we went
Absolutely.
back
That
and we
got us
looked
through.
at it to look where we were and where we came and what we wished we knew. But I think I mean, in certain respects, it was just in certain respects, in the best of respects, it was, oh, I was trying to pay it forward to say, here, friends, this is what you need to know. And as someone, if you're going through this, here, this is for you. And also selfishly, it was my own kind of vanity project of sorts, just to like
Mm.
to create, but also to document so that
Yeah.
so that it existed, I guess.
Yeah. That's awesome. God, good deal.
So
Good deal. Um, this has been awesome. I'm so glad that you came back and it was great having you. So thanks for making the time. What you already kind of gave us a hint of something that you got coming up.
yeah,
No
maybe,
jinxing.
maybe we'll see.
Maybe,
Well,
just a maybe. What else are you working on? What other creative endeavors are in your life right now?
so there's been auditions. I had to push this podcast before because I was on call for a commercial. I did not get it, which it's okay. That's what
Oh,
happens. That's how you know you're
right?
getting good. You get so close.
Yes.
Close. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, I the thing that I finished. Well, we'll see. We're finished. We're in process. I narrated my first audiobook. Called
Awesome.
Crazy Foolish Robots, written by Adina Mignonia. God, I always sometimes say Adina. I'm so sorry. It's a fantastic book. It's so cute. It's so lovely. Um, and we'll see how that goes. It's been an interesting process because like I did it all. I shipped it, and then it turned out that some of the files I did something weird in export, and then a month
Oh
later they're like,
no.
"You did something weird," and I was like, and I was like, "I don't. Why didn't you ask me a month ago when I sent these in?" So
Right.
I
Oh
went back
God.
and
Quick,
semi figured
recover,
it out.
recover.
So it was just sad. It was a good learning experience. It's something that I realized that I really want to do more of. Um,
Yeah.
but it
Audiobooks are
really
fun.
was. It was. I was like, I worked so hard, and then I went back and like punch and rolled and like went back and re-edited and I lost some of that work, which sucks. But
Oh,
always
right.
friends, always make copious notes, always
Yes.
always back up every step of the
Yes.
process.
Hit the save button immediately. I've done that editing this show, and I
Oh,
go back and I'm like, hit save immediately.
yeah.
Templates, people,
So at
templates.
And
some juncture that will come out, and I will be posting the shit out of that. And then we don't
awesome.
know. I mean, knock wood, like there's been I've had some cool auditions, some stuff that I've come close to, some stuff I haven't. So hopefully they say it's a numbers game. So I'm hoping like that number's like,
It's
yay,
I work in sales. It's the same damn
yeah,
thing. So I absolutely understand. That's
yeah.
awesome. And then I'll see you in June
Yeah, and
at
yeah, oh
Trip
yeah,
Long
and then
Island.
I will be soon. I'll be on social media, you know, talking about that like at nauseum because I'm also doing
Yes, same here.
I'm
Same
doing a
here. I would
little I'm doing
love
a
to have Peter join me, but he's not free.
yeah I'm doing a little I'm doing a little off like a little off mission or whatever, which is a like kind of a fitness. It's not, I don't want to say it's too fitnessy, but it's called Starfleet Fusion. It's like a Pilates
Oh,
yoga Delta
oh.
Vulcan thing
I
that
was a y- I
yeah.
was a yogi for years and years. I've kind of gotten away from it. So yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm
So
looking forward
I'm
to
kind
hearing
of
more about
excited
that.
about that. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having
And
me.
you got it. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Definitely visit our website over at secretfriendsunite.com and wherever you find podcasts. And of course, us at patreon.com, where you can hear all of our awesome spotlight conversations with great folks like Stephanie Czajkowski. Thanks very much. We will see you soon.
Thanks.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.